Speaking Human.
Today on Speaking Human, we dive into a heated discussion of the Olympic Committee's controversial Rule 40, and then sprint over to the podium to hand out our medals for Best Unofficial Olympic Marketing. Look out, Usain Bolt, because this podcast is coming at you fast.
Speaking Human.
Welcome to Speaking Human, where we simplify the world of marketing for humans. I'm Shad Conley, and I enjoy watching the worldwide quadrennial sporting event taking place in the third largest metropolitan area of South America.
That's a great way to not say things that we're not supposed to say, Shad.
Thank you. I work very hard on that.
And I'm someone who works for a company that shall not be named who really looks forward to global sporting event competitions with some of the best athletes in the world competing for medals made out of precious metals.
I tell you what, I think this is a good thing. I think we should do more in life of just not calling things what they actually are and instead using a bunch of words in their place.
That's the way that life should be in general.
Yeah, so it's a good way. That's what we need in the world. We need the world to be more vague about everything, I think.
It also sparks creativity, the creativity that came from vagueness.
That should be the title of something. I don't know what, but something. So that's what we're talking about on today's episode. We're talking about this strange and complex marketing rules surrounding the Summer Olympics. So Patrick, have you been watching the Summer Olympics? Are you into it?
Have I watched it, Shad?
I know.
Shad.
It's ridiculous, right?
Shad. No, yes. I've watched them.
I haven't watched a super lot of it this year, but I'm actually a pretty big fan of the Summer Olympics myself. I find it kind of amazing and mesmerizing the way they can make all these sports that you don't normally watch. Through the coverage, they make them so interesting and dramatic. A lot of slow-mo, but it gets me. It gets me almost every time I get into it.
I think it has a lot to do with the fact that the athletes, they're the best in the world. It's like the whole time it's on, it's like watching the Super Bowl because you're always watching the playoffs and the big event, right?
Yeah, and even if that's something like swimming or volleyball or badminton that you wouldn't normally watch, it still has that kind of those high stakes and drama to it. What do you think about this particular Olympics, I guess, compared to Olympics past? Do you think people are still into it? I mean, I don't know that I've heard a lot of conversation about it as much as I remember with the 2012 Olympics in London. You think it's still relevant or it's still kind of a big thing?
I think it is. I mean, I think people still love it. They still, rally around the athletes that represent their country. Everyone, even if they're not big sports fans, I think can relate to some part of what makes the Olympics special. What's interesting about it is that it takes place over an extended period of time, so people can hop in and out of the events as they have time. You know what I mean? And that accessibility makes them ideal for, I think, most people. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I think most people. I think what's kind of interesting about this specific Olympics is it's just kind of coming at the time where how people are watching TV is changing.
Yeah.
I know the ratings are down for this, but they say that like online streaming is way up. I just don't know, NBC has this prime time coverage every night. I just don't know how many people are like, let's sit down at 8 o'clock and watch the Olympics anymore. Like it used to be, that was the thing. Everybody gather around. It's coming on, the prime time. And now it's like people just watch things in such a different way or like get their information in so many different ways. I don't know that it's that everybody doing it at the same time thing as much as it was in the past, I guess.
Yeah, and I don't know if it necessarily needs to be. I think what's happened over the last 10 years, 5 years, is that it's become more convenient. The media in which we absorb the information has become more convenient for us, and you don't necessarily have to watch events that you wouldn't normally watch,
Yeah, and I agree. And it's still a thing. It's still a big thing. Most people are aware of it. It's an event. It only happens, every 4 years, the summer, winter, so it still has that status. I just guess from my perspective, and this is all observational, I'm on like Twitter all day, and I just haven't seen as much conversation as I kind of remember from like the recent World Cups or the 2012 Olympics, like I mentioned. So I just wonder if there's something happening there where it's just sparking less conversation, it seems to me, than it had in the past.
Well, I'm sure that we'll be talking about one of those reasons today.
I think we will be getting into that in a minute. Last question I guess I'll ask you is, just to kind of touch on something we'll be talking about going ahead here. What have you thought about the marketing around the Olympics, kind of like overall, in terms of advertising and online and the whole shebang? Same. I feel exactly the same.
I wish there was more. I wish there was better.
Yeah.
I mean, they're just not
more
they're
better
not-
and more unique. I mean, even like just for this show, like kind of doing some research and watching a whole bunch of kind of Olympic commercials and different online videos, they're all kind of the same. They're all like athletes doing something to music. I mean, over and over again, I'm like, somebody's got to be doing something different, or somebody's got to stand out in some way. And there's just, I don't know, there's an overall like vanilla sense to it all.
Maybe it's just that the things that we had really pinpointed over the last, few years, even on this podcast, those were the ones that really stood out. Now there's so many of them because everybody realizes that they're so good that everybody's trying to do kind of the same thing, that now that type of ad spot has become vanilla.
Yeah, that could definitely be, a reason. It's just everybody kind of adopts these trends. Somebody does something that kind of blows things up, and then everybody jumps on it, and you kind of wind up at that same spot of sameness until somebody breaks out of it again. So, and I think, as you mentioned, in our next part of the conversation here, we'll get into another driving factor between why some of the marketing and the conversation may be down. So before we get into that, though, let's take a quick moment to get a word from our sponsor.
Today's episode of Speaking Human is sponsored by... We're sorry, humans, but we aren't able to showcase a sponsor for this episode of Speaking Human. The you-know-what is still being broadcast, and the you-know-who will not take kindly to a podcast of this magnitude talking about their regulations or companies who sponsor said podcast. So we'll leave you with this. Congratulations to all the athletes who are bringing glory to their countries in #TheBigEvent.
All right, so Patrick, let's talk about the famed and acclaimed Rule 40. Rule 40 is a bylaw in the official Olympic Charter, and it states, no competitor, coach, trainer, or official who participates in the Olympic Games may allow his person, name, picture, or sports performance to be used for advertising purposes during the Olympic Games without the express consent of the IOC board. So who gets consent? Only official Olympic sponsors. So basically, that leaves out athletes and any small brands who may sponsor them. They can't mention each other. They can't talk about the games. There's a whole list of words that if you're not an official Olympic sponsor, you can't use. Words like Olympics, Summer Games, Gold, Games, Rio. There's a whole long list of this stuff. And kind of in the age, this rule's been around for a while, but in the age of social media, it's become more of a point of contention, especially for the athletes, who don't have a chance. They can't talk about their sponsors. They can't market themselves, I guess, in the way you would want to attach yourself to a brand and make some money. So for the, non-sponsor brands and the athletes alike, there's this limitation, censorship basically going on where you just can't say these certain things or the Olympic Committee will crack down on you.
Here's the thing. Rule 40 really affects the athletes the most, which I believe to be a huge disservice to the people who are essentially living and training for an event which has this limited lifespan. And as a top athlete who can compete in this arena, they themselves have a limited shelf life to accomplish their goals, right? Because you'll hear them say, this guy's 19, he's young, and then by the time he's 25, he's actually getting old, So they really have like one or two Olympics usually. I'm not saying that's true for all athletes, but they have this, limited shelf life of their bodies. And that's the rub for me. I think the rules should make it easy for them to make money during the event, which that's their prime marketing opportunity. What do you think?
Yeah, it definitely impacts the athlete.
Yeah, and I go back to it indirectly affects the marketing of the actual Olympic Games. You know, you said it earlier. How does the marketing compare? You know, like, do you think it's as good? And I really believe that, you know, not allowing the athletes to even talk, you know, social media is a great space to really ignite conversation, having people talking about the Olympics. And I feel like they've done a disservice to themselves by having this Rule 40 be so hurtful to the athletes, you know?
Yeah, no doubt. And trying to control social media this day and age, you know, even just brands on social media is so ridiculous. You know, you're trying to stop these people who are there within the games and brands who are a huge part of social media conversation. You know, whether we want to admit it or not, they spark a lot of conversation, you know, share a lot of stuff that gets shared or passed along, part of what creates that buzz around events. And that's why I feel like the buzz around this event this year is dulled. I feel like it played a big part in that. And it's just amazing to me that, you know, these big organizations or big brands, they are constantly in this battle to control the internet or control social media, you know, in 2016. It's ridiculous.
Or worse yet, they're controlling people.
Yeah, well, exactly. You know? For the athletes, I feel like it is much worse. You know, they're kind of getting used. We're going to take what you're doing here and promote it as our thing, but you are limited in how you can make money off of it.
Yeah, and essentially they should be the ones who are making money off of it, but they're not, you know, they're not able to.
So there is some kind of pushback happening now. We had the website rule40.com went up this year, which rallies against the restrictions. You know, the site states, Rule 40 prohibits athletes from marketing themselves during the most high-profile 2 weeks of their career, the Olympics. Meanwhile, official sponsors and the IOC profit. You know, and another part of it that's crazy is just all the different things the Olympic Committee is telling brands. You know, they were actually sent a letter. There was an Adweek article about this letter that went out to brands telling them all the things they couldn't say on social media. You know, Olympic, Olympian, Team USA, future Olympian, gateway to gold, go for the gold, let the games begin. Get out of here, right? You know what I mean? I understand you have trademarks on certain things, but come on, let the games begin. It just seems over the top and crazy.
Yeah, we're definitely on the same page.
So that's kind of the rub on the absurdity of Rule 40 and what's going on with that and how it's impacting marketing and Olympic conversation.
Yeah. Damn you, Rule 40. Damn you to hell.
Well, it's got a good, you know, like sci-fi name of something you can rally against. You're like, Rule 40 is trying to control us all. Meanwhile, Rule 39 could be like, we can kill all humans at any time. Nobody knows it because they're paying attention to Rule 40.
That'd be a great sci-fi movie. So keeping those Rule 40 parameters in mind, Shad, let's get ready to hand out some marketing medals.
Yeah!
It feels good as we stand on the shore and our hearts are jumping. Grab another Coke and let's dive in. No one can stop me when I taste that feeling. Nothing could ever bring me down. No one can stop me when I taste that feeling. Nothing could ever bring me down.
That catchy little ditty was a clip from Coca-Cola's Gold Feelings video, part of the brand's Olympic Games 2016 marketing campaign. As an official sponsor of the Olympics, Coke has the ability to use Olympic imagery, language, and the official Rio Olympics logo, a luxury not afforded to non-sponsors under the previously mentioned Rule 40. But that doesn't mean non-sponsors can't find clever ways to craft their marketing around the Olympics. And that's sort of what we're going to be talking about now. We're going to hand out some medals, bronze, silver, and gold, each of us, to 3 Olympic marketing-related efforts. So we're using that loosely here to constitute anything that doesn't come from an official Olympic sponsor. So do you want to start us off here and toss out your bronze medal?
Yeah, well, I would never toss it because it is still a precious medal, Shad. And
It's bronze.
you know, it could hurt somebody.
You know.
So my bronze medal goes to Oisel, who is not an official sponsor, like you said. They had to be creative with how they use the big games in their marketing efforts and chose to use terms such as hashtag the big event in their social media posts. Sounds familiar, right? I mentioned that a little earlier. And in some blog posts refer to the Olympics as the South American rodeo. Both very clever uses and totally legit ways to promote their brand. So I like that. I mean, they were just being creative and fun with their relationship to the athletes because they do sponsor athletes themselves, but they're not an official sponsor.
That's a good one. I did hear, I don't know if this is true, I heard this online, that they did get a warning from the Olympic Committee. The way I picture it in my mind, it's some old man who calls him up and he's like, "You're walking a fine line."
Is this the owner of Oiselle? Yeah. You don't want to go to this South American rodeo.
"You're on the tightrope right now. Don't fall off. Something bad might happen to you and your family." It's making the Olympic Committee like the mafia.
So what's your bronze? What did you pick out of the...
My bronze is a little weird. It goes to not necessarily a brand, but more of a marketing tool used massively, especially in unofficial capacities by individuals and some brands alike. And that is the internet meme. For those who don't know, a meme is a virally transmitted cultural symbol. The majority of modern memes are captioned photos that are intended to be funny. And the Olympics has really put out a lot of doozies. Now, memes have always been popular on the web. They're huge right now, but I feel like they're really flexing their muscles on the internet during the Olympics, reminding us all what a great social marketing tool they are. From Michael Phelps making his insane faces, to Usain Bolt smiling way ahead of a pack of runners, to Shawnee Miller diving across the finish line, to Tonga's oiled up flag bearer. The internet is taking these iconic Olympic moments and making them hilarious and, spreading them around like wildfire. So most of the content I've really enjoyed online related to the Olympics has been memes. If you Google it, just Google Olympic memes, get ready to laugh. You'll find a ton of good ones.
Yeah.
So that's my bronze medalist. Patrick, tell us what your silver medal goes to.
I actually picked another brand. I don't normally go for the animated spots. They generally don't have the emotional connection I'm looking for in an ad spot or a marketing campaign. But I really liked Gatorade's The Boy Who Learned to Fly, a short film by Moonbot Studios. In it, you see Usain Bolt and the abbreviated version of how he became the fastest man alive. I think it's really well done and still short enough that it's digestible for most people. That's probably one of the biggest reasons why I don't go with animated shorts, because they feel too long for today's ADD world we live in. But I liked that one a lot.
It's an interesting choice, and I'll tell you why. Because you have just made history. I think this is the first time we've ever picked something at the same spot within our non-list list of medalists. That's right. My silver medal also goes to Gatorade's The Boy Who Learned to Fly video/short film.
That's awesome.
Definitely a standout, especially, it's like kind of a longer form video. It's an elaborate effort. It's got like 2 minutes of credits at the end, which shows how much kind of work went into it. But it's just nicely put together and packaged. And you're right. It just quickly, as Usain Bolt would like, moves through his story, and reflects his fun and lighthearted image. It has the message you can always go faster when you keep it light, which I thought was really good. Kind of a nice touch is, with the Rule 40, as we've talked about, they can't mention the Olympics specifically or anything like that. So when you see in this video when he's like at the big race in a stadium, there's no Olympic logo, but you kind of see the Gatorade logo in the background.
Yeah, and in an animated short, it's a lot easier to do things like that, to make choices like that because you can control it.
Yeah, as we've talked about, in an Olympics where there are not a lot of standout marketing efforts going on, this to me was one of the ones that popped out at you as something a little bit different.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, now we've reached, the big moment of truth, the gold. Who gets your gold medal? Which unofficial Olympic marketing related effort?
Well, keeping with my entire collection here, I've also gone with a brand who was an unofficial sponsor. Unlike yours, where you've had memes and things like that. Mine goes to Under Armour's Roll Yourself spot, where they featured Michael Phelps. To me, this one broke through the clutter a little bit of the official sponsors, and in my opinion, showed all of the hard work and the dedication and the sheer determination that leads up to the event itself. And in many ways, is more powerful of an image to showcase. Something that they didn't really do very well, the official sponsors. People in general, I feel like they know what it's like to work hard for something, and to show that in a brand message and to acknowledge it and how that can translate to success, that's a winner to me.
And that's a good goal. That was probably the effort that had the biggest impact, that the most people have responded to, and it's become wildly popular. It has a big thing. And I think if you asked most people, they probably wouldn't even know that Under Armour isn't an official sponsor. Yeah. They've done that well at, within these limitations, without using these terms, yet still capture the tone and the essence of, what drives athletes and the whole inspirational quality of it. It's all in there without overtly mentioning it.
So what's your gold, Shad? Come on, man. Give it up.
Let me tell you, my gold, I wouldn't say it's as much as a rule breaker as my bronze, which I think you were calling me out as cheating on just a minute ago, but...
No, there's no cheating.
No, not at all. Not at all. Anyway.
Sorry, go ahead. So gold.
My gold goes to the Rule 40 ambush/cause marketing campaign. And we discussed this a little bit, when we were talking about Rule 40. This is the effort to just draw attention to this. So you have a website that was put together by Brooks, a fairly well-known, popular running company, put up this website to draw attention to the topic and what's going on with this rule and how it impacts athletes and why it's, ridiculous and why it's a big deal and why it needs to be changed without actually breaking the rule. They have merchandise or they have generic Rule 40 safe content they can post on social media. A big yellow block with text that says, "Good luck, you know who you are, on making it you know where." And then it refers to the Olympics as generic worldwide quadrennial sporting event. So they have all that kind of stuff. They have merch on there for athletes to wear, that say things like, "Running short, Rule 40, violation-free sportswear." Also the hashtag Rule 40 on social media that individuals, brands, and athletes have used alike to just draw attention to, what I said is the absurdity at the center of this rule as it pertains to social media in particular. It's somebody pushing back on that a little and drawing attention to it in a good way. Like I said, this is the first year I've ever heard of this rule and the impact it's making, and I think this effort is a big reason for that.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that, and that's a great gold. The effort itself is pretty top-notch, in my opinion. I mean, they've done a great job of not only bringing seriousness to the issue, but also has fun, like what we've been doing in the episode, even early on, being vague. While it's bringing light to a situation that's pretty serious for the athletes themselves, definitely brings the rule itself to the foreground, which is the most important part.
Yeah, but in a way that makes it viral, and easily shareable and discussable, and is kind of opening up the conversation on this.
Yeah.
If this podcast, you never hear from us again after this episode, you'll know why, people. You'll know why.
So why don't we jump into our top takeaways, Shad? This is going to be a doozy.
A real doozy. For my final takeaway, I'm going to harken back to another summertime staple. There was a young director named Steven Spielberg who went to make a little film called Jaws, and he found himself with a problem. The star of the movie wouldn't work. The mechanical shark was a nightmare of problems and malfunctions. Backed into a corner, Spielberg got creative, building tension by alluding to the shark for most of the movie instead of showing it. The results were awesome. The lesson for brands: use limitations to fuel your creativity. If the Olympics or any other overly sanctioned event are important to your brand or your audience, don't let limitations, no matter how absurd they may be, hold you back. Instead, use them to fuel a new way of thinking or drive a different way of looking at things. As Shawnee Miller proved by diving over the finish line in the women's 400 meter, there's more than one way to win the race.
That's a great takeaway, Shad. It makes me jealous that I don't tell better stories in my top takeaways. I will say this, we'll have to probably bleep when you mention specific athletes' names in this podcast.
Well, who doesn't love a good bleep?
We're also going to have to bleep Jaws,
Spielberg.
Steven Spielberg.
It's going to be a lot of bleeps.
It'll be bleeping everywhere. That's a great takeaway, though, and I appreciate it because really my top takeaway works in tandem with your top takeaway, and that is move forward with creativity. There's always a solution to a problem. And I've preached this to anyone who will listen for years. There are a million solutions for any one problem. Just like the unofficial sponsors found ways to piggyback on the Olympics without breaking the rules, you too can find ways to build a stronger message that promotes your brand. I call that, Shad, positive rule number 40.
I like it. I like the way you flipped Rule 40 into a positive manner. But it's true. I think we're both kind of going, headed to the same finish line with those takeaways there, where sometimes you have these limitations and, in a way it's a good thing. It just takes you would normally be focused within this little circle. And when you can't be, you kind of have to work around the circle and look for different ways of doing things. And sometimes that's just the spark you need to find your jaws, man.
Yeah, you could bang your head into a wall trying to solve a problem, or you could just go around the wall or over the wall, right? And sometimes those are way more effective than ones that didn't have any limitations at all.
Yeah, you're looking for something more off the beaten path. So sometimes when you're forced off that path, you just end up producing something more memorable and meaningful. So there's value to that. You got to remember that when you're stuck in those moments where you feel like, I can't work within these limitations. I just can't do this. You can, and you will.
We should be an inspirational podcast.
Yeah, you're right. We should change everything about our lives and just do a Dr. Phil and be like, cut out the nonsense.
Good old Dr. Phil. All right, everyone. Well, that's it for today's episode. You can find current and past episodes of the podcast at speakinghuman.com. You can also listen and subscribe to Speaking Human on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Spreaker, and Google Play. We're everywhere. We're everywhere you want to be. Oh, wait, I can't use that. Are they an official sponsor?
Visa?
Shh! You weren't supposed to say it.
As we've learned from this podcast, I'm not good at not saying specific names.
Hey, this is the Olympic Committee. Get on with it.
Tweet us with your thoughts on today's episode, any topics you'd like us to discuss on the show, or any questions or comments. That's at speaking_human on Twitter. At speaking_human on Twitter. We'll be back in 2 weeks with another episode of Speaking Human. Catch you then, humans.
Speaking Human.